Coming up today on the Nick Craig Show, the Southern Poverty Law Center has been indicted by the Department of Justice with allegations that it was funneling millions of dollars to the same groups that it claimed to be fighting against. We'll have all the details coming up. And a good Thursday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Don't forget that you can take the show with you 24/7 on demand in your favorite podcast app. It's real simple. Just search for the Nick Craig Show, tap the subscribe or follow button, and you'll get a new program delivered each and every weekday morning. You can also listen online by visiting the website nickcraig.com. Our show this morning is brought to you by Melissa Gott and the amazing team over at the Law Group here in Wilmington. For any legal challenges or questions you might be facing, visit them online, lawgroupnc.com, or give them a call, 910-251-6088. That's 910-251-6088. We'll get into this Southern Poverty Law Center news here in just a second, but we start off with more crime in southeastern North Carolina yesterday unfolding at Independence Mall, where a man was allegedly stabbed in the neck and killed, according to some of my sources within local law enforcement. And there is a suspect in custody this morning. David Eugene Bryan Jr. is the individual charged, and as I went through his legal record this morning, found out that he is a repeat felon. Prior charges include possession of a firearm by a felon, felony breaking and entering, felony larceny, and more. A criminal rap sheet going back to 2010, according to documentation and online databases here in North Carolina. He is, again, in this situation, the details are still very sketchy as of this morning, but it happened at Independence Mall yesterday afternoon. There was apparently some sort of argument, some sort of conflict near one of the bus stops at or in and around Independence Mall. That is when David Eugene Bryan Jr. apparently pulled out a knife, slit another guy's throat open. He was transported to New Hanover Regional Medical Center, dying either on transport or as he got to the hospital. We do not have the identity of that individual yet. It is not clear if these two knew each other, were in conflict with each other for something else. But what we do know is that this repeat offender, possession of a firearm by a felon, breaking and entering, larceny, was out on the streets, so he obviously has not learned anything from his criminal track record over the last 16 years. Comment coming in on our Rumble live chat. Homeless, I heard the same thing as well. Taking place here within the city of Wilmington. He was arrested last year in Brunswick County. So just an unfortunate circumstance and another serious discussion that needs to take place about individuals who are essentially revolving doors within the criminal system. When individuals are consistently committing crimes, when they've got a lengthy criminal track record, what do you do with these individuals? That conversation is taking place not only across the nation, but it's taking place in the North Carolina legislature as there's more conversation about involuntary commitment and holding criminals accountable for the things that they do. Obviously, David Bryan is being held without bail. He's got a court appearance today, and presumably he will be locked away for a good long period of time with his already lengthy criminal rap sheet of felony after felony after felony, and now killing a guy in Wilmington, from what I've been told, over a dispute over a bench at a bus stop in Wilmington next to or right around Independence Mall. So a miserable story. We'll keep an eye on the details. Make sure you follow me over on social media, The Nick Craig Show on Facebook, or at Nicholas M. Craig over on X. As news continues to break on this, I'll throw it up on social medias. And, of course, we'll do some check-ins right here on The Nick Craig Show as it is relevant. There is a major story unfolding out of the Department of Justice back just a couple of days ago. the DOJ announced an indictment coming out of Alabama, a federal indictment against the Southern Poverty Law Center, known as the SPLC. This is a group that is nothing more than a political grifter on the left. This group proclaims to raise money and to provide information and to fight back against hate groups in the United States of America. However, according to this federal indictment announced by the DOJ earlier this week, while the group was proclaiming to be fighting against, bigotry and racism and all of this hate that we have in America, turns out they were the ones actually paying for said hate, as the indictment alleges that they had spent nearly $3 million paying people to organize events with these alleged hate groups that they put on their hate list and so on and so forth to cause events to take place, including the Charlottesville situation that unfolded back a number of years ago, as we'll get into the details here on the show. Before I go through anything more, I think it's important to hear directly from the horse's mouth on all of this. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche held a press conference at the Department of Justice earlier this week up in Washington, D.C., laid out this federal indictment, again, coming out of the state of Alabama. So before I get into any of my thoughts on it, plenty of your comments as well that we'll get into. Let's listen directly to the acting AG to hear exactly what this thing's all about.
Good afternoon. Today, a few minutes ago, in the Middle District of Alabama, a grand jury returned an 11-count indictment charging the Southern Poverty Law Center with 6 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts of bank fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering. According to the charges in the indictment, the SPLC is a nonprofit entity that purports to fight white supremacy and racial hatred by reporting on extremist groups and conducting research to inform law enforcement groups with the goal of dismantling these groups.
Wow, great.
As the indictment describes, the SPLC was not dismantling these groups. It was instead manufacturing the extremism it purports to oppose by paying sources to stoke racial hatred. The indictment describes this conduct in detail, but one troubling example is that the SPLC was paying a member of the leadership group that planned the Unite the Right protest in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017 that resulted in the death of 1 person and injured dozens more.
I got to stop the acting attorney general right here, because this needs to be proclaimed over and over and over again. This is not, first of all, the Southern Poverty Law Center is not the FBI. They're not the CIA. They're not a law enforcement branch. You know who pays informants? Law enforcement entities. They pay people to get information on groups. The Southern Poverty Law Center is not that. It is a nonprofit entity that proclaims to be fighting against hate. They're not a law enforcement arm. You don't have paid informants when you're fundraising millions, hundreds of millions of dollars fighting against hate. It's the most insane thing in the world. Like they're pretending to be some sort of national law enforcement group fighting against hate. No, they're a nonprofit that doesn't pay taxes. So this idea of paying informants is absurd just on its face. And then you find out, as you just heard there from the acting attorney general, that the Unite the Right event in Charlottesville back almost a decade ago at this point, one of the top organizers of that event was on the payroll of the Southern Poverty Law Center. And of course, the event in Charlottesville was a major tipping point here in the United States. For months on end, it was used to describe everybody that supported and was in favor of Donald Trump. And so is there a possibility? Is there a possibility here, ladies and gentlemen, that the Southern Poverty Law Center informed or set up their informant to make sure that that event got out of hand so that they could use it as a major flashpan against the conservative right? Oh, man, that would be crazy to find out, wouldn't it? More from the acting attorney general.
This particular person being paid by the SPLC, allegedly received approximately $270,000 over the course of 8 years. In total, according to the indictment, between 2014 and 2023, SPLC paid at least $3 million to 8 individuals at least. These individuals were affiliated with the Ku Klux Klan, United Klans of America, National Socialist Movement, Aryan Nations Affiliated Sadistic Souls Motorcycle Club, the Nationalist Socialist Party of America, Nazis, and the American Front. Now, as the indictment lays out, after SPLC paid members of these extremist groups, it created work product that reported on these activities that the members participated in or contributed to. And to that end, it was doing the exact opposite of what it's told its donors it was doing.
Well, of course, right? I mean, if you can't find the boogeyman that actually exists, you just pay for it to exist, right? I mean, from that vantage point, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? You're trying to claim that all of these all these groups on the political right are a bunch of racist, Nazi bigots, fascists, all these other phrases. If you can't get those groups to do that, you just pay people in the tune of $200,000+ over a span of 8 years to go and proclaim said hate, to become key organizers in events that are taking place that allow these things to run out of control. This is what the SPLC is and was doing. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the worst example of a political grift that I've ever seen. Proclaiming to fight against hate, proclaiming to investigate on the secret hate networks that exist in the United States of America. Meanwhile, all these guys are literally on the SPLC's payroll. Another great comment coming in. Their, quote, investigations have never led to an indictment ever. Well, of course not, because that's not the business that they were really in. They were in the business, as we now know, and it was even obvious beforehand, they were in the business of ginning this stuff up so that they could point and say, look at all these crazy radical right-wingers. Look at all these crazy radical MAGA Trump supporting conservatives. Look at these people. These people are full of hate. These people are trying to destroy the United States. They're filled with anger and hate. They hate all these groups. They hate certain ethnic groups and certain religious groups. Look at these people over here. You got to give us money so we can fight back against this stuff. You've got to write big checks to us so that we can investigate these groups. Another great comment coming in. Sounds like a bunch of liberals who couldn't make it into the real FBI and are playing pretend. Oh, that's the grift. Paid informants. You're a freaking nonprofit. What do you mean you paid informants? This is the plot of every crime show that's on network television right now. But not the SPLC, a so-called nonprofit group, a nonprofit agency, or this nonprofit entity. I mean, even in the media now, it is very frowned upon to pay sources, even in the media. But you've got a 501c3 nonprofit known as the Southern Poverty Law Center paying people to play out hate, paying people to conduct said things that they are alleging are taking place in broad scales all across the United States. This is a major dig on the political left. This is a disastrous situation unfolding right in front of their very eyes. They have got so much invested in these groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center, and it is such a beneficial fundraising arm for them. This is an absolute mess. We just heard from the acting attorney general in Todd Blanche laying out this indictment coming out of the middle district of Alabama, with the Southern Poverty Law Center being at hand, that they were in fact paying people to conduct hate so that they could go and then fundraise against hate. We'll take a look at the hate map and all of these groups that are a part of it. Before we get into that, here is the FBI director in Kash Patel laying out some of the additional details in this indictment against the Southern Poverty Law Center.
To announce what the general just told you. The Southern Poverty Law Center, in a massive sweeping indictment, has been charged with allegations of fraud and using the banking system to perpetrate that fraud. I just want to talk about a couple of brief things here. The Southern Poverty Law Center themselves advertise to raise money to dismantle violent extremist groups for a period of at least a decade. They use their donor network to raise money to purportedly dismantle violent extremist groups. However, the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, used the money they raised from their donor network to actually pay the leadership of these very groups.
Let me stop Kash Patel here for a second. Let's also lay out some of the scale, size, and scope of this. The Southern Poverty Law Center wasn't just raising, a couple of bucks here and there. This is a group that fundraises at the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Right? This isn't just some small little 501c3 that raises, $100,000 a year. No, not at all. This group consistently rakes in hundreds of millions of dollars. This is a very beneficial fundraising tool for the political left. And you might say, Nick, the Southern Poverty Law Center, what are you talking about? This is a good group. They're fighting hate. Go look at their hate list. It's just a bunch of conservatives and Republicans, traditional Catholics. That's who the SPLC believes is promoting hate in the United States. It is nothing more than another mouthpiece for the progressive left.
I just want to say that again. They used the fraudulently raised money by lying to their donor network, thousands of Americans, to go ahead and actually pay the leadership of these supposed violent extremist groups. The groups, as the general laid out, include the Ku Klux Klan, the United Klans of America, Unite to Right, National Alliance, the National Socialist Movement, the Aryan Nation Motorcycle Club, and the National Socialist Party of America, and also the American Front. In at least one of these matters, our investigation revealed that funds were used to facilitate the commission of further state and federal offenses, totaling over $3 million. Furthermore, our investigation revealed that the Southern Poverty Law Center, on top of perpetuating this widespread, decade-long, multi-million-dollar fraud, conducted more criminal activity. They attempted to hide their criminal activity from our financial banking network. They set up shell companies and entities around America so that the financial institutions that we rely on as everyday Americans were deceived in believing that money was not coming from the Southern Poverty Law Center in the perpetration of this scheme and fraud, but rather fictitious entities they stood up to perpetuate this ongoing fraud.
Of course.
This is a serious and egregious violation of a group that purported to dismantle violent extremist groups, but in turn actually only fueled the hatred. This is an important case brought by President Trump's administration. We're thankful for the president for his leadership and funding of not just the FBI and DOJ, but his commitment to go out there and wipe out fraud and conspiracy and waste and abuse wherever it occurs, including the Southern Poverty Law Center. Even though this money was made to appear to be coming from legitimate people and legitimate entities, we at the FBI, with our great partners at the Department of Justice and in the state of Alabama, were able to comb through a decade worth of material, a scheme that took a decade to build, so that we were able to follow the money, because money never lies, and they got caught. As the Attorney General said, these charges are varying, they are widespread and wide-ranging, and this investigation is very much ongoing. Today, we're here to announce the charges of the Southern Poverty Law Center, and this investigation and the individuals who are responsible will be brought to justice.
Amen to that. Love to hear a little bit of accountability in talking about bringing these people to justice. The probably the most shocking thing in all of this is the Charlottesville Unite the Right event that happened back in 2017. That was a major flashpoint in American politics. It was even so impactful of an event that if you remember back to the 2020 presidential election, remember this? Joe Biden, who would, of course, run in 2020 and become the 46th president, claimed that the rally in Charlottesville was such a bridge too far to him that it caused him to jump into the 2020 presidential race. That event, according to Joe Biden, was so instrumental in the United States, was such a terrible, awful event that took place that it drove him to run for president. And we now find out through this DOJ indictment that the Southern Poverty Law Center was paying one of the leaders of that event, one of the organizers of that event, more than $200,000. This is a major political story. This, if played out right by the Department of Justice, could have wide sweeping impacts across the United States, because the Charlottesville rally back in 2017 is really where you saw a lot of these left-wing groups begin their march towards freedom and protecting democracy. This was the event. This was the catalyst event for these groups. They used the pictures of the tiki torches, using the video of the guy getting run over by the car, used that as their clarion call to begin their left-wing assault. And we now find out that one of the people responsible for that event, and in all likelihood, if I had to guess, one of the individuals who was probably encouraging the event and making sure that things got out of control, was being paid through a shell company by the Southern Poverty Law Center. I mean, what a disgrace. If you can't find the hate, you might as well manufacture it. That is the long and the short of this story dealing with the SPLC. If you can't find the boogeyman, you might as well just create him. And that's exactly what this group has been doing now for decades. And it's not just the Unite the Right event in Charlottesville. They were paying high-ups and organizers and other people and groups like the Ku Klux Klan and others, literally funding hate, building hate to profit so that they could pay their executives, their board members, their high-ups within the SPLC major salaries. This is absolutely disgusting. But it is not, unfortunately, and I say this as genuinely as I can say it, it's really not surprising. It's really not shocking. We see this all the time with the political left. They manufacture everything. Their ideas suck. Their policies are garbage. And so instead of running on that stuff, they just gin up a bunch of garbage and a bunch of nonsense to get their way. That is the current state of the progressive left. That's what they're known for. That's what they do. And so while this indictment is major, and we'll continue the conversation here in just a minute on it, I'm genuinely not going to sit here this morning and tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this is shocking to find out. It's not shocking at all. This is par for the course with these scumbags on the left. This is par for the course with the out of control hatred that actually exists on the political left. We'll just fund people to create hate. And then we'll go out and raise $500, $600, $700 million on it. Great idea. And I guess it is. Pretty good grift. Because Charlottesville was a major flashpoint in American politics. Pretty good grift. Until, of course, you get caught. Till Donald Trump gets back in the Oval Office. And he sets his sights on these groups. Not for political purposes. That's the left-wing narrative on this. Oh my God, the DOJ is targeting the Southern Poverty Law Center. Yeah, well, they're a bunch of crooks. They were defrauding their donors. They were using the banking system to do it. They were being incredibly disingenuous with what they were doing as a 501c3. What a bunch of bullshit. There's no other way to describe it. We'll grab a quick break. I'll have some more thoughts on the Southern Poverty Law Center, this major indictment from the Trump administration, Trump's DOJ. Plus, we'll get to some of your comments as well as the Nick Craig Show continues. But before that, I want to tell you about the law group here in Wilmington and thank them for their continued support of the Nick Craig Show, reminding you that when legal challenges arise, and from time to time they can and they will, the law group in Wilmington has got your back. Since 2003, their experienced attorneys have provided high-quality, affordable legal services across the eastern half of North Carolina. Whether you're facing a divorce, maybe you're navigating a real estate transaction, or maybe you're in a position where you need a strong defense. No matter the issue, the law group is there for you. Their dedicated team ensures your questions are answered and issues are resolved as quickly as possible. Great news, folks. The law group is not some big national firm. Melissa Gott and her team live right here in southeastern North Carolina. Their office is located in downtown Wilmington, and they're just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. For any legal challenges, 910-251-6088, or online lawgroupnc.com. It's the law group, experience and dedication you can rely on. We appreciate the law group and their continued support of the Nick Craig Show. All right, we'll grab a quick break, continuing the SPLC conversation coming up after this as the Nick Craig Show continues, streaming live this morning, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. And a good Thursday to you. Welcome back to the Nick Craig Show as we continue with this bombshell indictment out of the Department of Justice. The announcement earlier this week that the Southern Poverty Law Center, the SPLC, the 501c3 nonprofit organization that claims to fight hate and fight racism and bigotry and discrimination and all of these terrible things that happen in the United States, was in fact funding the exact same hate in which they were fundraising against. And so for anybody that has donated to the SPLC going back to the 1980s when they were originally funded, that money, at least portions of that money, literally went to members of the very hate groups and extremist organizations that the SPLC claimed that it was going to combat, to fight, to expose, and to defeat. And one of them, as I saw in the indictment, was an individual by the name of Paul Mullet, a former KKK member and a director of the Aryan Nationals. The SPLC paid him $70,000, and he is listed on the SPLC website as one of their key hate drivers in the United States. This is how they describe him on the SPLC website. Paul Mullet is a neo-Nazi and Christian identity adherent with a long history of theft. He has been involved with the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan and the Aryan Nation and formed the American National Socialist Party in 2010. Sounds like a pretty bad guy politically. But apparently it wasn't bad enough to receive $70,000 from the SPLC. I mean, they literally write it. It's literally in the indictment. They paid him more than $70,000, claiming that the website, which is they have it listed as their extremist file, but they were paying him. So I started looking through the SPLC hate map, and I'm going to be honest with you. The SPLC, while it's a very large organization that raises a lot of money, most folks, I think, on the political right have essentially ignored them now for a significant number of years because they don't do anything. I mean, they claim that pretty much anybody that is on the political right is a hate mongerer, a bigot, a racist, a fascist, a misogynist, a homophobe, a thisophobe, a thatophobe. And so, similar to the boy who cried wolf, and the SPLC has kind of put themselves in this situation where I don't think many folks on the right even look at them to take them seriously. That, of course, is their own doing. They have nobody to blame but themselves on that. So I started looking at who they have listed as part of their hate in the state of North Carolina. And there's some interesting groups on here, including the Americans for Legal Immigration group, which is based in Raleigh or has a chapter in Raleigh. That is listed by the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, as a group that peddles in hate. How about the North Carolinians for Immigration Reform and Enforcement? Doesn't sound like a crazy group, right? We want to make sure that there's immigration reform. We want to make sure that people that are in the United States of America are here legally. We want to make sure that they are following the rules, following the laws that are on the books. Doesn't sound too crazy. Well, they're listed by the SPLC as a hate group. The group, the list goes on. The Constitution Party of North Carolina is listed as a hate group. Education First Alliance, which pushes for transparency in the public school system, which is a champion for parental rights across the state of North Carolina. They're a hate group, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center. Every chapter of Moms for Liberty, which similar to other groups, we've actually just chatted with Tina Deskovich, the CEO and founder of Moms for Liberty last week or the week before. She joined us here on the show to talk about the May the 1st protest, a group of pissed off parents that are frustrated with what's going on in the public education system. All of those groups, all of those chapters listed by the Southern Poverty Law Center here in North Carolina as anti-government hate groups. The Pavement Education Project, similar situation there, a group that is fighting for parental access, fighting for transparency, fighting for school choice. They are listed as an anti-government hate group according to the SPLC. And the list goes on and on and on and on. Should be no surprise to see all of the groups, all of the names of these entities that are listed here by the Southern Poverty Law Center. So as I was doing some research on this, I went over and was checking out all of the groups in which they have listed as hate organizations. And currently, as of 2024, the Southern Poverty Law Center has 533 organizations listed as active hate groups in the following categories: anti-immigrant, anti-LGBTQ+, anti-Muslim, anti-Semitic, Christian identity, general hate groups, hate music, I have no idea what that means, the Ku Klux Klan, male supremacy, neo-Confederacy, neo-Nazis, racist skinheads, radical traditional Catholics. You better watch out for those people speaking Latin. You know, might destroy your city or town, as well as groups that they claim to be white nationalists. They also have identified another 800 238 anti-governmental groups. So in total, more than 1,000 individual groups all over the spectrum that the SPLC has got listed as their purveyors of hate, groups pushing hate here in the United States. So I caught an interesting article over by Jim Garrity. He published this over at the National Review with this headline: How Your Tax-Deductible Donation Went to the Ku Klux Klan, Neo-Nazis, and Other Groups Funded by the SPLC. And he has a really good kind of write up and kind of walkthrough of what's going on with this. And he writes, kind of giving a little backstory, a little history. Starting in the 1980s, the SPLC began operating a covert network of informants who were either associated with violent extreme groups like the Ku Klux Klan or had infiltrated violent extreme groups at the SPLC's direction. These, quote, informants were referred to by some individuals within the SPLC as field sources, or Fs, the letter F and then a lowercase s, Fs, for, I guess, field sources or something like that. Between 2014 and 2023, the SPLC secretly funneled more than $3 million in SPLC funds from donors to these field sources who were associated with various violent extreme groups. In the indictment, F-37 was a member of an online leadership group that planned the 2017 Unite the Right event in Charlottesville, Virginia, and attended the event at the direction of the SPLC. This informant made racist posts under the supervision of the SPLC and helped coordinate transportation to the event for several attendees. He was paid, as we already noted, $270,000. Another individual, F9, who was known in the indictment, was affiliated with a neo-Nazi organization, the National Alliance, and served as a source for the SPLC for more than 20 years. This individual's activities included fundraising for the National Alliance, and the SPLC paid him more than $1 million. More than $1 million as he was literally fundraising for groups in which the SPLC claimed that they were fighting against. In addition to directly paying leaders and others associated with the same violent extremist groups that the SPLC sought to raise money against and to quote-unquote dismantle, the SPLC also used those field sources to indirectly funnel money to other violent extremist groups, according to the federal indictment. This included one of their individuals funneling more than $160,000 from a fictitious shell company or entity that was sent to various extremist groups, including the former Grand Wizard of the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. And this thing is nuts. They had built out an incredibly sophisticated network of shell companies and wash-through organizations and entities to make sure that this money was as clean as possible. And seemingly, if we look at what Charlottesville, the 2017 Charlottesville event did, with great success. Because as I mentioned a little bit ago, Joe Biden, the 46th president of the United States, claimed that the only reason he jumped into the presidential contest in 2020 was because of Charlottesville. So I guess if you were looking for ROI from the Southern Poverty Law Center, they absolutely knocked it out of the park as it relates to funding these hate groups. I mean, they absolutely killed it. I mean, what are we doing here? This is what the modern left is. This is what these groups are now. I mean, it doesn't get any more blatant than this. It doesn't get any more in your face than what the SPLC was doing. As we are continuing the coverage of this DOJ indictment against the Southern Poverty Law Center, typical group on the political left can't find the boogeyman that you're looking for, so they spend nearly $3 million funneling that money to various people and entities on their hate list, their hate watch list across the United States, so that they can prop those groups up so that they can fundraise. I mean, by definition, you are frauding and defrauding your donors. I mean, let's just lay this out as basically as is. Remove all the politics from this altogether, which of course you can't, but let's just remove all the politics. You are raising money for a cause, in this case, fighting extremism. And you are using portions of those donations to fund said extremism so that it can continue. That you are, by definition, defrauding your donors. You are committing actively large amounts of fraud within this Southern Poverty Law Center. I mean, they were defrauded on a massive scale. The Southern Poverty Law Center currently has a nearly $800 million endowment that was based all on this fear-based fundraising. And I think it is fair to say that hundreds of thousands of well-meaning Americans sent checks to groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center, because again, their proclaimed goal of fighting bigotry, fighting racism, fighting hate, doing all of this phenomenal work, I think resonates with a lot of people. So this group took hard-earned money from well-meaning American citizens to then funnel it to leaders within these organizations. Phenomenal comment coming in on the show right now. I wonder if they had a hand in January 6th. That wouldn't be surprising in the slightest. I would, as this continues to play out, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it does. There is undoubtedly more that the DOJ and the FBI will be able to uncover as now this indictment is out. A grand jury in Alabama returned that indictment earlier this week. There is going to, I am sure that the paper shredders are running on full bore over at the Southern Poverty Law Center today. I am sure that emails and chat messages and contacts and phones are literally being wiped as we speak and have been over the last couple of days, because if the group was this entrenched in the event that took place, the Patriot Front event that took place in Charlottesville in 2017, if they were that involved in that and saw the success that they did in that they absolutely would continue to infiltrate other events. I mean, it is what we're talking about, folks, is textbook fraud. And so the question is, where do we go from here? Obviously, you want to see people go to prison over this, right? They were defrauding their donors. If this was any other charity, which, again, as a 501c3, that's what the Southern Poverty Law Center proclaims itself to be, that you would want the individuals that were in charge of that organization to be thrown in prison. I mean, they're a 501c3 nonprofit. You would want, if this was not a political organization, but this was a group raising money. Let's use a North Carolina example. Raising money to help people in Western North Carolina. If there was a 501c3 doing that, and it turns out that they were paying people to make storms, to horrific natural disasters, you would say, wow, that group is frauding me as a donor. That group is taking my money under false pretenses for what they're claiming to do. That's how you would handle this if it was any other group or entity. And the Southern Poverty Law Center needs to be treated the exact same way. And this is nothing new. We've seen these major nonprofit entities over the years be federally indicted, or sometimes they're state indictments, and we've seen the leaders of those organizations go to prison, and they should. Because you're defrauding donors. You're taking people's hard-earned money, convincing them that you need to give me money for this cause that I'm fighting for, this project that I'm doing. Meanwhile, you're funding that. And so at this point, regardless of the how the legal challenge will play out, which will obviously be lengthy and take a long time, as it stands right now, the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, literally today, should be revoking their nonprofit status. And anybody that donated to the Southern Poverty Law Center, I would hope that there will be some sort of major class action lawsuit against the entity for people to recoup their funds, to recoup the money that they gave to this organization to fight hate, to fight discrimination, to fight racism and all this other stuff in America, and claw that money back because the money was raised on false pretenses. The money was raised so that the Southern Poverty Law Center could go out and fund these groups. And let's make sure that we understand a couple of things about this. I mentioned this at the open. The Southern Poverty Law Center is not a law enforcement entity. They're not the Federal Bureau of Investigations. They're not the CIA. They're not any other group. They're literally a nonprofit. So this idea of having paid informants is totally illogical just based off the top. But let's just be clear. These weren't paid informants that were, holding a glass against the wall, listening to conversations going on in boardrooms. These weren't paid informants that were just standing, sitting in group chat messages or standing at meetings and listening to what was going on and then running back to the SPLC and reporting. No, not at all. These individuals that the SPLC were paying were actively participating in these events. In the case of Charlottesville, actively coordinating the event, according to the indictment, literally setting up transportation to bring people to said event. This is not, hey, I was at this meeting last night and I heard these people saying this crazy thing. Give me a couple $100 and I'll tell you what was going on. No, these are people actively organizing the event. And I think this builds on a larger discussion of this grift that is all of these hate watchdog groups across the country. Because the SPLC's record is anything but clean. They have lost multiple defamation lawsuits. They have been forced to remove people's names and organizations' names from their website's quote-unquote hate map after receiving significant pushback and being faced with legal action. And now we find out, according to this DOJ indictment, that the whole thing has been completely blown open. They were acting as a political tool for the progressives. They were acting as another branch, essentially, of the Democrat Party. Because when you look at the groups that the SPLC lists as hate, it's not, any sort of, it's conservative groups. It's parents that are fighting for transparency within their kids' education. It's Catholics that are Orthodox and go to Latin masses. That is who the SPLC believes is actively being detrimental to the United States of America. Right? It's not, you notice that Black Lives Matter is not on any of their hate group lists. Notice that none of the radical Middle East extremist groups that have propped up on college campuses all over the place that are chanting, death to Israel, death to Jews, death to America, none of those groups are on the SPLC hate map. You find that interesting? I do. And I think it's why many on the political right, we don't even take the SPLC seriously. I mean, you see things about them every once in a while. Something will come across my newsfeed about them. I don't even bother looking at it because it's so blatantly obvious where this group stands. It's so blatantly obvious what they're doing. They're not protecting hatred in America. They're not fighting against bigotry in America. No, they're fundraising millions of dollars so that they can attack conservatives and Republicans. That's the grift. And it's not just the SPLC. Now, they're the ones, of course, who are in this indictment for paying informants. But there are dozens of groups on the political left that are doing this exact same thing. And the most recent example of this grift is the Protecting Democracy crowd. You've got these groups doing the same thing, raising tens, hundreds of millions of dollars on protecting said democracy from Donald Trump and the Republicans. It's all a grift. I cannot wait to see high-ups within the Southern Poverty Law Center thrown in prison for what they did. This is what accountability looks like. And if you don't like it, tough shit. That's what these groups were doing. That is what the indictments lay out. And the indictment is very, very detailed, right? This is not just some, we think that something might be. No. They've got all the track records on this. They've got the bank account information. They've got the transactions. They've got some of the dates where these payments were taking place. That's what was going on. And so if you don't like this, obviously because you're on the political left, there's been very little coverage of this from MSNBC and other organizations because, again, doesn't look good. But this doesn't look like this is not a winning issue for the political left. So there's been very little coverage of this from MSNBC, from CNN, from these other organizations, and you shouldn't be surprised by this, right? Because it's them that are responsible. It's the people that they have surrounded themselves with that were doing this. More than $3 million worth of donor funds going to the same damn groups that they claimed to be fighting against. Props to Kash Patel. Props to the acting attorney general and Todd Blanche for blowing this thing open. And I cannot wait to watch these scumbags at the Southern Poverty Law Center rot in prison, hopefully for the rest of their lives, for what they've done. And to see the dismantling of these groups on the left. I mean, this is how you begin the process of turning the United States around. Is dismantling this grift. Dismantling what not is just, oh, I disagree. No, it's literally fraud. And I am of the mindset that this is very much probably the tip of the iceberg with these groups. Of course, we've spent a lot of time in the past, over years now, talking about groups like Act Blue, the same kind of shit going on there. So the day of reckoning is here for these left-wing groups. Kash Patel and Todd Blanche are not screwing around on this stuff, and I look forward to more and more people being held accountable for their fraudulent actions and the things that they were doing. We'll keep you up to date with the details right here on the Nick Craig Show. Just doing a quick refresh here of local news to see if we've got any details on this stabbing that took place in Wilmington. No, it looks like no new updates there, so keep an eye on my social media channels. We'll bring you the latest on that as it continues to unfold. Well, that's going to do it for a Thursday edition of the Nick Craig Show. Thanks to the law group here in Wilmington for their continued support. For any legal challenges, visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. The Nick Craig Show streams live weekday mornings, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook. It's also available 24/7 in your favorite podcast app and is heard weeknights, 9 to 10 p.m. on WBT Radio in Charlotte. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. We'll do it again tomorrow morning right here on The Nick Craig Show.